You are juror number
31.
31. Okay. Before I turn questioning over to the attorneys, I'm going to swear you in so that all your answers are under oath, and then ask a few questions myself.
Sure.
So if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
Thank you. We are sticking to COVID-19 procedures. I will keep my mask on. We have plexiglass between us, and there's plexi between you and the lawyers. But that, I think, is sufficient that if you want to remove your mask in order to answer questions, and if it's necessary to be clear, feel free to do so.
Thank you.
But I'll pretty much leave it to your discretion. So, first of all, with regard to the questionnaire, is everything true on the questionnaire? To the best of your recollection.
At the time it was completed, yes.
Yes, and there's actually an issue there that I'm going to talk about. Now, in fact, let's talk about it right now. Your mother was in hospice at the time the questionnaire was filled out.
She was.
Okay. Current status?
She passed away a month ago.
Okay. Do you think that that's going to be, obviously, you're probably still grieving? Is that going to be a problem of being a juror in this case?
That won't be a problem.
Okay. And we'll talk about other issues as well. Other than that, are there any other changes, amendments, additions to the questionnaire?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could state what those are that you recall right now.
At the time the questionnaire was filled out, it was accurate. Since then, I have considered some of my answers and learned more information.
Okay.
That would change at least one of my answers.
All right. Is it the type of thing that would either reveal sensitive or embarrassing information about yourself or identification information about yourself? In other words, the details are so specific that somebody would be able to do that? Or is it simply some opinion or other thing that you wanted to amend from the questionnaire?
It's other. It's not sensitive information.
Okay. I think then we'll stay on the audio and the record, and you can feel free to state it since we are in individual questioning.
Yes. Well, it might reveal some sensitive information, frankly, Judge.
All right. Is there any objection to going off audio? All right. All right. Then under the rules, under Minnesota Rule 2602, subdivision 4.4, we're going to go to a modified in-camera examination. Specifically, we'll cut the audio. So in other words, All right, we've had an examination of the juror off audio but on the record, and on that basis the court has excused the juror for cause, and it's my understanding that the state and the defense have no objection to that. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And Mr. Nelson, do you have any objection to that?
I do not. No.
All right. We'll proceed to the next juror then, juror number 36. Come on up. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
You are juror number 36.
Yes.
All right. Couple things. We have all the COVID precautions in place. I'm wearing a mask and will continue to do so while you're here. And we have plexiglass between us, and you also have plexiglass between you and the rest of the courtroom. Leading to my option for you of taking off your mask. If it will be easier to hear you that way,
Okay.
and if you're comfortable, but if you're not, keep the mask on.
I'll take it off.
Okay. In either case, if you could make sure you're close to the microphone,
Okay.
that would help us a lot.
All right.
A couple things before I turn it over to the attorneys. First of all, I'm going to swear you in so that we know that all your answers are under oath. So if you
Okay.
could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right, thank you. Now, first of all, you received a questionnaire which you filled out, and thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yeah.
Is there anything, since it was months ago, anything that you wanted to change, amend, add to? And I say that because sometimes you fill out the questionnaire and then you realize on reflection there are items missing, or you've even changed your opinion about things.
No, not
Okay.
really.
The attorneys might specifically talk about questions, and in doing so, if you find that that's really, there is something you want to change, feel free to do so.
Okay.
Nobody gets in trouble in this courtroom for adding or amending to their questionnaire.
Sounds good.
All right, now, that questionnaire also advised you not to read anything in the newspaper or watch any media about this,
Yeah.
and I assume you've done that, but it was months ago. We understand sometimes that inadvertently you might be exposed to information.
Yeah.
That is not seeking it out. See a headline, a friend might talk to you about the case, and since we said don't tell anybody you're a potential juror, you can't really stop them. Anything like that happened that gave you additional information about the case?
No, I've been trying not to see anything about it.
Okay, so nothing about the parties, the procedures,
No.
anything like that? Okay. You did describe what you, up until the time of the questionnaire, knew about the case.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is going to be, can you put anything you've heard outside this courtroom aside and decide the case just on the facts, the evidence, and the law that you received from the court?
Yes.
Okay. Also, you may have formed opinions about this case or generally. Also fine. Everybody probably has an opinion based on what they've heard or saw or seen.
Yeah.
Can you put your opinions aside and decide the case on the law again and the facts and the evidence?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Any concerns about that?
No.
Okay. You received a long list of witnesses.
Oh, yeah.
Recognize anybody on there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, great. Anything about the length of the trial that would cause you problem?
I mean, I don't know yet how lengthy it's gonna be.
Okay, we anticipate that after today, you'll know whether you're on the jury or not,
Okay.
and you'll come back March 29th. So you'll be on your own, do whatever you want
Yeah.
until then. And then we anticipate, our best estimate, is that trial will be 4 weeks long.
4 weeks long.
Is that, can you make that work?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, before I turn over to the attorneys, I'm also going to advise you, this is kind of a formal process. But as you're talking to the attorneys, sometimes we lapse into normal conversational style, which includes talking over each other. And we are taking this down. The court reporter needs for people not to talk at the same time. So
Okay.
if you kind of keep that in mind, and to be honest, the lawyers and I are the worst offenders on that. And so we have to be reminded. But just so if you could keep that in mind when you're answering questions.
Okay.
All right. Then, Mr. Nelson, you may inquire as to juror number 36.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today with us.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is just kind of go through some general questions, get to know you a little bit better, and then ask you some specific questions about how you answered on your questionnaire. Is that okay?
Yep, sounds good.
I'll tell you, I know it's been a long time since you filled this out. You may not remember every word you wrote down, but we have a copy. We've studied it. We're not trying to trick you. Just want to follow up on some stuff.
Okay.
All right. So if you and I were to meet in a social situation, we're having a casual conversation, first time we meet, what are some things you want me to know about you?
Ooh. I don't know. I'm pretty outgoing, family-oriented. I'm a house person. I like sports, soccer.
Soccer?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's your favorite soccer team?
Ooh. It was Real Madrid when Ronaldo was there, but yeah, right now, I still go for Real Madrid, I'd say.
Okay. Great. When you received the notice that you were going to be a juror, just the general notice, you got jury duty, what was your first reaction to that?
I mean, it was kind of mind-blowing because it's a big case. So yeah, it was kind of exciting.
Exciting?
Yeah.
Why would it be exciting?
I mean, just because it's a big case, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Did you have any concerns about being called as a juror?
Not really. Didn't thought about it.
Okay. How about when you got down to the government center today?
When I what?
When you got here to the government center
Uh-huh.
and you see, the National Guard and
Yeah.
barricades and all of that, what did you think?
I mean, nothing about it. I mean, it was secure. I didn't feel not safe.
Okay, good. And do you have any concerns about being here during the age of COVID-19?
No, not really.
Okay. So let me ask you, in your, I double checked one thing, I'm sorry. In your personal life or your professional life, can you think of a situation where you have ever been called on to resolve a dispute between two people?
Yes.
Okay. Without revealing people or, any identifying information, can you just give me a general sense of what that
And I used to be a manager, so
Okay.
so yeah, there was a lot of issues with workers and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah,
So what types of issues would you be called upon to resolve?
I mean, just dumb stuff like people not liking each other or stuff like that.
So kind of interpersonal disputes?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes? I'm sorry, we have to say
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
I don't, I'm trying to preserve the record here, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be rude or
No,
glib.
no problem.
Okay. So you have two coworkers, right? And they work under you. One of them comes and says, he did this to me, right?
Yes.
And how do you resolve that conflict? What did you do to try to resolve those conflicts?
Just hear both of them, and from there just come to a resolution.
Okay, but so was it simply just listening to someone and come to, how do you arrive at that resolution?
Just common sense, see who's like in the wrong, or
Okay.
you know.
So so that kind of leads me into my next question is, how do you determine who's telling the truth in this situation? What do you do for that?
If there was more people, I will call them in and ask about it, because clearly I wasn't around. I could have been in the office. So maybe call more people that was around there to see who's telling the truth.
Okay. Would you look for any other type of evidence?
No. I mean, if it was something bigger, I could check cameras or stuff like that.
So you could potentially get additional evidence, right?
Yeah.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, based on what people say, maybe other witnesses, what they say, what other evidence may exist, like cameras, you can come to a conclusion,
Yes.
right? Can you think of a situation where you would have two people looking at the same circumstance, like you're watching the same TV show almost, right? And they both view it differently? Like they both reach different conclusions?
I mean, it hasn't happened to me, but I think it could happen if the person likes more one of those people involved in the issue. Like, it could happen.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Your job as a juror, right? You are what we call the judge of the facts.
Yes.
Right. Your job is to determine what happened in this particular case, right? And then you're to take those facts and apply it to the law that the judge gives you. Do you understand that? So let me ask you a couple of questions. If the judge tells you this is the law, and this is what you need to decide, and you think it's wrong, you don't agree with it, whether it's a moral disagreement or a personal disagreement, or you just can't believe that that's the law, can you follow the law as the judge tells you to do?
I can.
Okay. Even if you think it's wrong?
If it's wrong, if I think it's wrong,
Right.
I mean, I also follow the law.
Still follow the law.
Yeah, but if I feel that something is wrong, I don't get the question, honestly.
Sure. So, kind of a strange example. But what if, let me think of, what if I were to tell you, the judge told you that DWI, driving while impaired, is perfectly legal, right? You can drive as much as you want and as drunk as you want, right? You may disagree with that, right?
Yes.
You think it because DWI is wrong. But what if you're sitting in this case, right, and the judge tells you something that you think is wrong, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Can
Yes.
you still follow the judge's instruction, even if you believe it's wrong?
Yes, I can.
But again, kind of back to the original line of questioning, which was this. You are one of 12 people. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And would you agree with the general principle that there are two sides to every story?
Yes.
Do you think it is important to listen to both sides before you reach a conclusion?
Yes. Of course.
Can you wait for the entire trial to be over before reaching a conclusion?
Yes. I will have to hear every detail about it.
And so then the question becomes, now you're sitting in the jury room and you're deliberating, right?
Yeah.
11 other people, 12 including you. And you see some piece of evidence that comes into this trial. And you think it's the most important piece of evidence in the whole trial.
Okay.
Another juror's looking at that exact same piece of evidence, and he says or she says, oh, that's meaningless, it's irrelevant, that's not important. This is what's important. How do you resolve that type of conflict? What do you do?
I mean, when we are already talking with all the jurors, I mean, just talk it out. Like, hear their point of views and my point of. They have to hear my point of views, and yeah, there's gonna be 12 of us. So
Right. Are you willing to re-examine your own point of view?
yes,
So if that piece of evidence is sitting in front of you, and you think it's the most critical piece of evidence, that's the key that unlocks this whole story, and someone else says, no, I see it a different way, are you willing to listen to that other person?
I'm willing to listen, and I hope they're willing to listen to my points as well.
Right. That's what we hope for ultimately too,
Mhm.
right? But I guess then the question becomes, what if you continue to persist in the idea that this other juror is wrong? Right? That he's wrong, I'm right. How do you handle it then?
How do I handle it? Just talking it out, like I said. I might be wrong.
Okay. Let's say you've talked it out over the course of hours or days, right?
Yeah.
Do you just go, all right, fine, I give up, I'll agree with you, simply to make a decision, or are you willing to stand by your principle even if other people disagree with you?
I'm willing to stand by my principle as well.
And you, again, understand that this case is going to, we're anticipating it's going to last about a month, right?
Yeah.
And I know, based on your answers, that you've seen some videos that have been publicly released about this case.
Yes.
Would you agree that that is one piece of evidence?
Yes.
Can you understand that there is a lot more evidence that we have to discuss?
Yes.
In fact, we're talking about this lasting a month, right?
Yes.
So, despite having seen this video, are you willing to listen to all of the other evidence?
Yes.
And you may have formed some opinions already, in fact, I know you have, based on what you've seen. Are you willing to potentially allow all of that other evidence to change your opinion?
Yes.
So I just want to ask you some follow-ups on your questionnaire, sir.
Okay.
Shouldn't take too long. Again, the questionnaire was filled out a couple months ago. I understand you may not remember everything you read. Again, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just trying to explore some of your thoughts
Okay.
and why you may have written what you wrote.
Sounds
So,
good.
the first question that you were asked just was basically for you to give kind of an outline of what you knew about the case already, right?
Yes.
And you wrote a fairly long paragraph onto a second page about what you knew and what you remember seeing, right?
Yes.
Now, you wrote, for example, when George Floyd was on the floor, Chauvin was kneeling on his neck the entire time. George Floyd was screaming for help and desperately screaming that he couldn't breathe. All this while the rest of the other officers were just watching it happen, and bystanders who were witnessing were telling Chauvin to get off George's neck because he was killing him. So, would you agree that in your paragraph, part of your paragraph, you chose some words that are indicative of your opinion of this case?
I mean, I just put whatever. I just described the video I saw,
Okay.
pretty much.
But like the word desperately screaming, right? Desperately, you've formed an opinion about what you saw in that video, that there was desperation. Would you?
And that's what it was.
Okay, and that's fine. And so I want you to acknowledge that you formed an opinion about this case, right?
I mean, like I said, that's what it was. Like, everybody's gonna see him, that he was desperate.
Okay. You agree that you have formed an opinion about the case, right?
If you would say it, then yeah, that's what it is.
So, because the next question kind of asks you about your opinions. The question was, from what you have seen, read, or heard, do you have a general impression of the defendant, Mr. Chauvin? And it gave you some options: negative, very negative, neutral, somewhat positive, or very positive.
Yeah.
Like a kind of a spectrum of options. And you checked very negative. Right? So you have formed here already a very negative impression of Mr. Chauvin based upon what you saw in that video. You would agree?
Yes.
And it's perfectly fine for you for that to be your opinion. Right? I'm not challenging that.
Yeah.
And the questioner asks you to explain, and you say, there was no reason for Chauvin to kneel on his neck for that long, and him just being stubborn, not wanting to let go, gave me the impression of him just showing off his authority. Right?
Yes.
So, again, you're acknowledging, and it's okay. I'm really not trying to, say that you can't have an opinion.
Okay.
I need you to acknowledge that you have formed some thoughts about this case.
Okay.
And that those thoughts really go to the ultimate question that a jury has to decide. Is Mr. Chauvin guilty or not guilty? Right?
Okay.
And so if I were to ask you right now what your verdict would be right now, guilty or not guilty, what would it be?
Objection, Your Honor.
So you understand, and you were asked some questions about the principles of law that apply. Right? You were asked questions, and the judge reminded you yesterday that there are very important constitutional principles that apply, such as the presumption of innocence. Do you remember that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. In the questionnaire, and then yesterday when the judge was giving you some instructions,
Yes.
you were told about some important principles of law.
Yes.
One of those principles being the presumption of innocence,
Oh, yeah.
right? So Mr. Chauvin is presumed innocent of these charges.
Yes, until we see all the evidence and everything,
Right.
witnesses.
And so you have formed an opinion about his guilt or not guilt status, correct?
Yes, but like I said, I'm willing to see all the evidence and everything.
Okay, and
Hear witnesses.
that's ultimately the question, right? I mean,
Yes.
is we know you have an opinion,
Mhm.
right? And what you have to do if you were to be selected as a juror in this case is to set everything that you know from before aside.
Yes.
To say, yeah, I don't think very highly of Mr. Chauvin, but I haven't heard all the facts yet, right?
Right.
Can you do that?
I can.
You were asked about the number of times that you have watched some video of Mr. Floyd's death, and you estimated it to be 2 or 3 times. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I'll probably say like once or twice and maybe some clips about it.
Okay. So that's kind of what I wanted to ask is, when we talk about the video, there was a video that was uploaded to, I believe, Facebook.
Yeah.
It went viral and was shared around
Yes.
the world. Is that the video that you have watched once or twice?
Yes, that's the video.
Okay. That video, did you watch it from start to finish?
Yes, I did.
And so you watched the entire video 2 or 3 times? Or once or twice, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you also have seen various news stories, things in the media that may have a still shot from that video, or it may be just 30 seconds of that longer video, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand, again, that video is just really a finite number of minutes in a much bigger picture.
Yes.
Are you willing to set any opinions you may have formed watching that video based on all of the other evidence that may be introduced in this case?
Yes.
So you were also on the questionnaire asked some questions about what I've kind of referred to as the aftermath, the protests, the demonstrations, and ultimately the riots
Yes.
in Minneapolis. And you indicated that you felt that the aftermath, so to speak, had a negative impact on this community.
Yes, it did.
And can you just explain a little bit more?
I just feel that it just went bad. Like there wasn't need for all of the criminal activities that happened, all the burning and looting and all of that.
Okay. Do you think that anything positive came out of it?
I mean, yeah, probably people wanted to voice their opinions, how they felt. Yeah, but then we had all the people going to those events for the wrong reasons.
And you can draw a distinction between a person's voicing their displeasure, protesting, and looting or rioting.
Yes.
There were a series of questions that, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm missing a page. If I can have 1 second, Your Honor. I apologize. There was this, thank you. There was a series of questions that you were kind of asked to circle your opinion from 1 to 5. Do you remember? You may not remember what they all say, but
Yeah, I remember doing that, but
yeah. So there were roughly 12 of these statements, and then you were asked to strongly agree, somewhat agree, have no opinion of it, somewhat disagree, and totally disagree or strongly disagree, right? So I want to ask you about a couple of your opinions. One of the questions, or one of the statements that you were asked to rank was, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be. And you circled that you somewhat disagree with that statement. Can you explain what your thinking was there?
it says that media what? Sorry.
It says discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be. And you somewhat disagreed with that statement.
That's just how I feel about it.
Okay. So you don't think that discrimination is I mean, I'm not suggesting that you don't think it exists or that it happens, but would you, another way of saying this being that you think that the media may embellish discrimination?
I mean, the media, even when the video surface, like all you're gonna see is the picture of him kneeling in George Floyd's neck or stuff like that. The media just puts things a little higher than what they are.
Okay.
What's gonna like bring more attention to them? That's how I feel.
Okay. And so in that regard, you can separate what you may have seen in the media from the evidence in this case.
Yes.
Do you think that to some degree your opinion about this case that you have coming in here today was influenced by the media?
A little bit, yeah, but like I said, I still need to see the bigger picture, evidence,
Okay.
hear witnesses and all that. There's more to that than just what media shows.
Okay. One of the other questions was, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions they make while on duty. Do you want me to read that to you again?
Yes.
because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second-guess decisions they make while on duty. Okay? And you strongly disagreed with that statement. Okay?
Okay.
Can you explain that?
Why strongly disagree? I didn't understand the question.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's just flesh this out a little bit.
Yeah.
Police officers or policemen make a variety of decisions, agreed?
Agree.
And some of those decisions, they have a lot of time to think about those decisions. They may talk to their colleagues about it, right?
Yes.
And that's not the kind of decisions we're talking about, I think. Right? If an officer breaks the law, you wouldn't question, and they have plenty of time to make that decision, right? You wouldn't question a prosecution of an officer for breaking the law. Agreed?
I would. If they're breaking the law, I would question them.
Right, that's what I think we're agreeing. I'm saying it poorly, unfortunately. Let's assume an officer was stealing drugs from the evidence room. Right? It's a conscious decision. He makes that decision or she makes that decision. They should be prosecuted, right?
Yes.
Their decisions should be second-guessed, in other words, right?
Yes.
Okay. But would you agree that there's a difference between those types of decisions and an officer is chasing a suspect down, they've been in a car chase, they're chasing this person down a dark alley, there's no lights, and suddenly the person turns, brings their hand up, and the officer shoots, right? Split-second decision, right? It turns out it was a cell phone that the person pointed at the officer. How do you feel they should be reviewed in those types of circumstances?
I mean, just talk with the police how he felt about it and what he saw, if he really feared about his life.
So there's still an analysis that has to go into it,
Yeah.
but whether or not it should be prosecuted criminally is a different question. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Now you have there was a question that asked, have you or anyone close to you had any of the following experiences? And it was victim of a crime, and you wrote, someone stole my car, right?
Yeah.
Can you just tell me, how long ago was that? Where did this happen?
That was like 4 years ago.
Okay.
Outside of my house.
All right.
Yeah, I left it running and
Oh,
for like 5 minutes, went outside and it wasn't there anymore.
let me guess, it was winter?
Yeah, it was winter.
So warming up the car, letting
Yeah,
it run.
and it was fast.
Yeah, someone came in and took it.
Yeah,
Did you call the police?
I did.
Okay. Did they respond?
They did. I think they got in a little chase with them. They crashed the car, unfortunately.
Okay. So the police responded to your request for help,
Yes.
right? Ultimately located the car. The person who stole it gave chase, crashed the car.
Yes.
And what was your level of satisfaction with the police response to that?
It was good.
Right. You were grateful for that?
Yes.
And do you feel that they treated you fairly?
Yes.
Okay. Was the person who stole your car, to your knowledge, prosecuted for stealing your car? Meaning, were they?
No, I don't even know, to be honest.
Okay. So you never had to go to court and testify?
Yeah, I never. After that, I never heard about it.
Okay. Nobody even called you and said?
They
"Hey."
just called me to say where my car was and to pick it up, and that was it.
Okay. Did you have to have it repaired through your insurance company, or was it kind of totaled?
It wasn't a bad crash. They just hit him from behind. I don't know. It was just a bumper. So
Okay.
So it was an easy fix.
Okay. But no one ever called and said, hey, we can, if you want to make a claim for restitution from this guy or anything like that?
No.
Just got your car back and, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you generally have a positive or negative view of police?
I mean, positive. They're here to help us.
Would you agree just kind of with the general concept that, like any profession, there may be some good ones and there may be some bad ones?
Yes.
You acknowledge that they do a very dangerous job, right?
They do.
Not that every call is dangerous, but
Right.
you know. You were asked a few questions about your opinions regarding the justice system, and I'm referring kind of to the courts and, you know, the whole system, right?
Okay.
You asked you were asked, do you believe that the jury system in this country is a fair system? Why or why not? And you said yes, because it involves citizens randomly making bias or discrimination less probable, and because not all citizens have the same beliefs. Can you just expand on that a little bit more? How do you think that the jury system decreases the probability of discrimination by...
Because, I mean, you guys are not handpicking the person that's going to be here as a juror, so you pick 12 random people, you don't even know where they're coming from, what's their background, anything of that. So yeah, there's more probability than if someone is picking the person that he likes or whatever.
Right. It's not like I could just call 12 Minneapolis police officers to
12 of
be
your
there.
friends, yeah.
Right, or 12 of my friends, right. Okay, that makes some sense to me. And then you asked, do you believe our criminal justice system works? Why or why not? And you wrote, yes, it has been convicting and punishing the guilty, making them stop offending, and it somewhat protects innocence. Explain what you mean by that.
I mean, it's been working until now. You've been, like today, we're going to have him on court, and then go from there, take a decision. So
Right.
so we're doing the job.
And your response kind of says the system works because it convicts people and it punishes people. That's how I interpret what you wrote. Am I wrong in that interpretation?
No.
You know that not everybody who is charged is ultimately convicted. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I just went on the side that, but I also put over there that it was
To protect innocence.
protecting innocence. So yeah, there's clearly criminals and there's people that are here in court and they're not criminals.
Well, there's this old saying that says, under our system, we would rather free 10 guilty people than convict one innocent person.
Yeah.
Would you agree or disagree with that concept?
I agree.
Professionally, again, without saying where you work, you're a route driver,
Yes.
and you expressed some concern about potentially losing your job over this.
Yes, but I mean, I talked with my manager and doesn't look like it.
Okay.
I hope not.
All right. Well, that's because we recognize that jury service is a hardship for everybody because it
Yes.
takes you away from your family and your,
Yeah.
your work and whatever. So there's kind of two layers. So you have talked to your manager already about it?
About being on jury and that's about it.
Okay, and that's fine. And you told him that if you were on a jury, it could be a long trial.
I didn't say that. I just said that if it would have any problem.
Okay. And your employer or your boss told you it shouldn't? You don't get your shifts covered or whatever?
Yeah, he said it shouldn't.
Okay. But you would potentially lose that income?
Yeah, we'll lose income and get paid. How much is it? $20 a day.
Yeah, being a juror is not a very high-paying job.
Yeah.
I guess the question is that financially, like, do you have? I mean, will you be okay if you weren't working for a month?
I mean, I think I'll be okay. It kind of sucks, but I mean, if I'm a good fit and I could help, that's okay with me.
Good. And that's kind of what you say is that this is a really big case, and that's why I would like to help and be a part of this. When asked if you wanted to be a juror.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment.
Mr. Slisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. Juror number 36.
Hey,
Good morning.
good morning.
I've enjoyed getting to meet you a little bit this morning. You mentioned in response to defense counsel's question about what you would like us to know about you, that you are outgoing
Yes.
and that you're a family man. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
I'd like to hear a little bit more, without providing identifying information, but just about your family and your extended family.
I mean,
Brothers and sisters.
they're not close to me right now, so whenever I have the opportunity, I go visit them.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd just rather be at home than going out.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers.
Okay.
That's it.
And do they have spouses? You have nieces, nephews?
No, I'm the only one married.
Okay.
My brother is next. My little brother is the next one to get married.
Okay. And your parents, are they in the area?
No, they're not.
Okay. So what brought you to Minnesota?
Who brought me to Minnesota? I have cousins, uncles that live here. So yeah.
Okay. You also described yourself as outgoing, so I'm assuming you have a lot of friends.
I do. Yeah, I made friends here.
And in the area, do you have a fairly large friend group?
Yeah.
And you also talked a little bit about your management experience.
Yes.
And in the situation in which you're managing, what was the general age range of the employees you were managing?
I'll say like it was half. Half were high schoolers, and then in the morning we had older people,
Okay.
like younger than 60.
So with half of the people you were managing being high schoolers,
Yeah.
so the question about managing conflict and mediating disputes,
Mhm.
did it help being an older brother to gain those management skills?
Yes, I'm not the older brother. I have an older brother.
You have an older brother?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm the one in the middle.
All right.
But yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that experience of managing high school students.
I mean, it just helped me grow up as a person. Like it just helped me having to help a lot of people. It was nice. I like that.
What were some of the biggest problems you have to deal with when managing high school students?
That most of them, they just don't want to work. Yeah, they like to play a lot, so yeah, it was a little hard.
Getting them to show up and then
Yes.
getting them to work when they did show up?
Hmm.
Okay. There was a question on the questionnaire regarding some general impressions you may have formed of George Floyd. And you stated that your general impression was neutral, but you added that if he had complied with officers' orders, this wouldn't have happened. Do you recall making that statement?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what your thought process is there in making that statement?
I mean, it's just obvious if he wouldn't just comply, then that wouldn't happen. Maybe he just wouldn't been arrested and put in a cop car, and that's about it.
Do you think that that might affect you one way or the other in terms of coming to a decision regarding the conduct that occurred after he had been placed on the ground?
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
Sure. You indicated that perhaps if George Floyd would have complied with the officer, he would have just been arrested and this wouldn't have happened. But what I'm wondering is if that, if that belief that you have, if that would somehow affect evaluating any conduct toward him after, he was placed on the ground.
Oh, no, that wouldn't have any conflict.
Okay.
No, there's more to it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
No, like there's more that happened than just that.
Okay. So, would you agree, or do you feel that even if the George Floyd was initially non-compliant, you still have to look at what happened and
Yes.
evaluate the conduct and the responsibilities
Yes.
separately?
Mhm.
You agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. You stated in your questionnaire that you believed that you somewhat disagree with the proposition that the criminal justice system is biased against minorities. Do you recall that response?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've come to that conclusion?
And they're somewhat biased. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the media, and all they show is that they're being biased. So yeah, that's why I somewhat disagree, because I haven't honestly felt that or be in a position to feel that way. So yeah.
The media in the news, I noticed that you're also somewhat of a fan of true crime shows.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that right? So tell me what true crime shows you watch.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I said, I'm a route driver, so somehow I'm always listening to podcasts. And yeah, it's just true crime stories. Crime Junkie.
Crime
Like
Junkie?
that. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay. How often do you think you listen to that podcast?
Whenever an episode comes out, I'm working 8 hours, so I have plenty of time to listen to different episodes. I don't only listen crime stuff, so
It's not all crime all the time?
No.
Okay.
So there's plenty of other shows that I listen to, news, sports, podcast.
But you did indicate in your questionnaire that you've always been fascinated with crime cases and how they're resolved. So it seems fair to say that you do have somewhat of a developed interest in
Oh, yeah.
crime. Can you tell us a little bit about what draws you to those kinds of stories?
I mean, right now, it's everywhere. Like, you go to Netflix and there's a bunch of shows about it. I think that a lot of it gets just pushed to you. That's why.
Comes up on your feed?
Yeah, it comes up on my feed. I don't know if they're targeting me already or they know I like that stuff. So. But yeah.
I suppose I could ask you what else comes up on your feed, but that might draw an objection.
Right.
But in that, in following some of the crime story, I'm just wondering if you've ever considered pursuing a career in criminal justice or anything like that, law.
I haven't thought about it, to be honest.
Okay. So fair to say this is just a curiosity or an interest that you have among others.
Yeah.
Between that and you said soccer.
Yeah.
All right. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you very much, Your Honor. No further questions, and we pass for cause.
All right. Juror number 36, you will be on this jury. Couple of things. You're going to be on your own. You can go back to work if you want.
Okay.
But we need you to report March 29th by 9 a.m. And we expect the trial to start on that day and proceed for probably 4 weeks. If there's any change in the schedule, for example, if we get a delay for some reason, we'll give you a call and let you know. We're probably all going to give you a call to remind you anyway, so be prepared for that.
Okay.
Please do not investigate, do not read about this. In fact, if you could affirmatively avoid media coverage about this or any podcasts that involve this case, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
But do you have any questions for me?
I do not.
Okay, then you're released for the day. We'll see you March 29th.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, one last thing. You did receive a letter with a sticker on it.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that. You'll need that on March 29th to get back in the building.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's do juror. Let's make a record on the one juror. Was it 40?
43 or 45?
Mr. Schaefer.
It's 43.
All right, juror number 43 returned their questionnaire saying no English, no English. That was the answer for everything. I would also note, if counsel was not aware, that person also did not return their initial qualification questionnaire to determine the basics of whether they're a resident of Hennepin County, a citizen, etc. But I think the parties have reviewed this matter and are agreeable that that person be stricken for cause. Mr. Slisher?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Morning. All right, you are juror number 37, correct?
Correct.
All right. Before I turn it over to the attorneys, we're going to do a couple things first. Well, first, I want to swear you in so that all your answers are under oath. You'd raise your right hand. You swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror.
Yes.
All right, thank you. First of all, you filled out a questionnaire, and thank you for taking the time to do that. I know it took a long time. It was rather long, but you obviously paid a lot of attention because there's a lot of detail. Was everything true that you listed in that questionnaire?
Yes.
All right. Since you filled out the questionnaire, some time has passed, and it's very common for jurors to realize they forgot something or needed to change something, or even that their opinions have evolved. So I would ask you, since you filled out the questionnaire, is there anything you wanted to change or add or delete from that?
My opinions may have evolved, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I think the attorneys might explore some of that. Is there anything right off the top of your head as far as opinions
No.
that have changed that you think might be important to know?
No.
Okay. The questionnaire also advised you not to read any newspaper articles or and to avoid media about this case since you are a potential juror. But since it was filled out months ago, it's not that uncommon that people inadvertently see a headline or a friend might say, "Did you hear about this?" And since we told you, don't tell anybody you're a potential juror, you can't exactly stop them. So, did anything like that happen to you where you received more information inadvertently, either seeing a headline or friends talking or something?
I've seen headlines, yes.
Okay, do you recall specifically what any of the headlines were and when they were?
No.
Okay, any substance about the case, procedures, any of the parties involved?
No.
All right. Okay, now, and the whole point of a lot of this is everybody who's come into this courtroom has heard about the case and knows a certain level of information. But regardless of how much or how little you know, the important thing is that you put aside any information you may have learned in the media or from anywhere for that matter and decide this case only on what you hear in the courtroom. Do you think you could do that?
I'm unsure.
I'm sorry?
I'm unsure.
You're unsure. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about that? Because, and I'm sure the lawyers would say the same thing, you have to be fair and impartial, and people will honestly say, I would try. I've never met a juror who wouldn't try. But some people say, but I know I could not put it out of my mind, for example. Or, I've read it, I understand, I can put it aside, I know myself well enough to know that it would not infringe on the decision I'm going to make. Tell me about that.
I will try, but there's no reason. I've seen the video, so I can't unsee it.
Right. And is there anything else about the case that you think might be impossible to let go that you've heard about outside the courtroom?
The length of the time that it happened.
Okay. So the actual fact that was depicted in the video. Okay. The other thing is, and these kind of go together, what you know about the case may have given you certain opinions about the case already. And that's fine. I think just about everybody who's been exposed to information forms an opinion of some sort. And it may not be about guilt or not guilty, it may be more moral judgments or things like that. Can you put those opinions aside and not have it come into the jury deliberation room?
Yes.
Okay. So bottom line is, we're looking for a jury who can be fair and impartial, and the essence of that is that they decide the case according to the law based on the evidence alone that you hear in the courtroom and nothing else. Knowing yourself, do you think you can put aside everything else, opinions, what you've heard outside the courtroom, and decide the case? And we're looking for your honest answer. Could you do that, you think, in this case?
As far as opinions, yes.
Okay. What about facts you may have seen in the media? Could you put that aside?
Not facts, no.
Okay. And is that mostly about the video that was seen?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the attorneys. Oh, I forgot to ask you. Did you recognize any of the witnesses who were listed on that long list of witnesses?
No.
Okay. And the trial time is going to be about 4 weeks once we start on March 29th. I think you did indicate some concern with jobs and that. I'm going to leave that to the attorneys to explore, but do you think it's to the point where you could not serve? Or could you make arrangements? Could you make it work?
I'm a single parent, so I have limited support.
Okay. Well, the jury for deliberations would be sequestered, which means you'd be staying in a hotel till there was a decision made. How would that, as a single parent without a lot of support, what do you think that would do?
I possibly wouldn't be able to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I possibly wouldn't be able to do it for entire 4 weeks or however long it took.
Okay. Right now, during the trial itself, we don't anticipate the jury being, you'll be able to go home every night during the case itself. That may change if circumstances require it, that I may, in the middle of the trial, say, now you've got to go to the hotel. I don't think that's going to happen, but you definitely would have to stay in a hotel during deliberations, which, how long deliberations go is entirely up to the jury. I mean, it could be an hour, it could be days. How do you think that would affect you in your situation? Is that doable?
I am unsure if that's doable because we don't know how it's going to go, but I will try my best.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nelson for further questioning. Juror number 37.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
And I should say, if you feel comfortable, you may remove your mask if you like. We have plexiglass, and I'm going to keep my mask on. But totally up to you. If you feel more comfortable keeping the mask on, feel free to do so.
Okay.
How are you today?
Good.
Good. I was having a little trouble hearing a couple of your answers, and unfortunately, I don't think that microphone moves, so if you could get a little closer, that may help. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming down here. I think you were here yesterday as well, and back down here today, so I just want to thank you for your patience. Sometimes these things take a little bit longer. So here's what I'd like to do is ask you some kind of general questions and about just to get to know you a little bit better, a little bit more about your life. And then I'm going to focus on some of your answers to the questionnaire. Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. So juror number 37, let's assume you and I met at a party or some social event. What are a few things you would want me to know about you when I walked away from that conversation?
Nothing personal, maybe my name, age.
This completely unrelated to this case. We're just two strangers who bump into each other in a social situation. You wouldn't want me to know anything about you?
No,
Why?
because you're a stranger.
Okay. How do people go from being strangers to friends?
By conversation.
Okay. Would you entertain a conversation with me?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, let me just say, are you nervous today?
No.
Okay, good. I promise you that I'm not trying to trick you or anything like that. I just need to know a little bit more about you so we can see if you're the right person. I'm going through the same process with every single person.
Understood.
Okay. So, I'm not asking you to reveal personal details about your life here either, okay? But we do have to pry a little bit. So again, take all of this out of the equation, right? My friend and your friend are friends, and they introduce us. We're sitting there, we're two people, we're talking. What would I walk away knowing about you? What's important to you?
Probably that I am a mother. A little bit about my career. Probably where I'm from.
How many kids do you have? Remind me.
2.
2. And just their ages? How old are they? Are they younger?
Yeah, they're younger.
Okay. Great. You received, as I understand, a letter from Hennepin County saying you were going to have jury duty, right?
Correct.
When you opened that first initial letter, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, man.
Why oh man?
Because it's a pretty high-profile case, and it's important.
Sure. And again, everybody who has come in here has heard about this case and has had a somewhat similar reaction. So it's great. So were you concerned about your security or your safety when you read that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to me a little bit more about that?
With a high-profile case, I know everything becomes public. So depending on what's ruled, that could be a problem later on down the line or even in the process.
Okay. And so you would be concerned that people would learn your identity, and again, we're trying everything we can to not let that happen, but you'd be concerned then for your personal well-being?
Yes.
Okay. As well as your children, I'm assuming, too.
Of course.
Now, when you came downtown yesterday and you saw the situation outside, you know, the military and the police and the fence and all of that, did that raise your level of concern or make you feel safer?
I felt safe, but it also raised my level of concern.
Okay. How so?
Just seeing the action that needed to be taken. But once I got here, I felt safe. Okay.
So I missed one sentence in there because I was trying to get comfortable, which is hard to do here. You said something about the actions being taken.
Just seeing the level of action that needed to be taken in order to just do this part of the case.
Okay, gotcha. And then once you got inside the building, you felt safe and...
Correct.
Good. When you heard yesterday that your face isn't going to be on TV, did that make you feel safer?
No.
Okay. Are you concerned about that, about the fact that this is being televised?
No.
Okay. So can you tell me about a situation or think about a situation in your personal or your professional life where you have been called upon to resolve a dispute between two people?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you go about that process in your personal life? How do you resolve a dispute between two people?
Well, I want to hear both parts of the story and make a decision on who was wrong and who was right.
Okay.
And explain my reasoning.
All right. And how you listen to both sides of the story, right? Are there any other steps or tools, so to speak, that you think that you could use to help decide right or wrong?
I guess it's about who I feel like is telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. So it's an intuition? Or are there things that you could, like for example, maybe talk to another person who was there?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not intuition. It's about talking to another person who was there, or are both of their stories lining up and somewhere went wrong, and based off that, those.
All right. And so you are, in this case, let me just put it this way. In this case, there's going to be a lot of evidence that's admitted into this case, right? And we know, based on your questionnaire, that you've seen the video, you've referenced this video this morning, right? But we're telling you also that this trial may take a month to hear, right? To get all of the evidence in front of you. Are you willing or are you able to set what you know about this case now aside and judge this case based upon the evidence in court?
Like I mentioned before, there's video surveillance, so I can't unsee the video, so I'm not able to set that part aside
What if I were to tell you that there's a fairly high probability that that video that you've already seen is going to be evidence in this case? So you're going to see it again.
It's still going to be traumatizing to me.
Okay. And again, you know, what we're trying to do here is just to find out if you're the right person for this case. And so again, I don't mean to pry or anything. I just want to make sure that you're the right person.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, good. And we'll kind of come back to the video and some opinions and stuff in a little bit, okay? Can you think of a situation in your life where you were certain about something only later to be shown that you were wrong?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how did you deal with that?
I want to take accountability for it.
Okay. Are you the type of person that's willing to re-examine your own views? Or are you the type of person who, once you've made up your mind is made up?
I can re-examine my own views, but I always want to hear what others may think of it. I can't just make that decision on my own.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask you some follow-up questions on your questionnaire. And I know that you haven't read this in a couple of months, right? Again, and I'm telling every single person the same thing. I'm not trying to trick you, but there may be some things you wrote down. I'll read them to you, and we may have some follow-up questions. But if I can have 1 second to confer with counsel about something?
You may.
Sorry about that. It's kind of weird to know we're talking about you, huh? I had to clarify something with Mr. Slisher, who is one of the attorneys for the state. When the judge was asking you beforehand about what you wrote in here and how your views may have changed since then, I believe that you said your views have evolved since you filled this out.
They may have, yes.
They might have.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing specific or nothing like kind of global, but as we go through this, there may be things that you've changed your view on.
Exactly.
Fair enough. And we all know that, again, everybody wrote this like in December, I think, and it's now March, and nobody, one person so far has actually kept a copy of it, so, all right. Okay, so you said before that your that you obviously had heard about this case.
Yes.
Right. Everybody in the world has, right? Okay. And you wrote you wrote kind of a dissertation or a lengthy paragraph about what you had seen or what you had heard in the news, and I appreciate that. Oh, before I go on, I have one other question. Do you have concerns about COVID being in the courtroom?
No.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions is that from what you have seen, read, or heard, do you have a general impression of the defendant? That's Mr. Chauvin. And it gave you a series of choices from very negative, somewhat neutral, somewhat positive, very positive, or other. And you selected very negative.
Correct.
All right. One thing I'm going to just tell you, and again, I've been telling this to the other jurors too, is that you have every right to have an opinion, all right? And I'm not questioning your right to have any opinion that you have, but we need to know what those opinions are, again, so we can determine if you're the right juror, right? Okay. So you chose very negative, and do you share that same perspective today? Has this evolved?
Yes.
Okay. So you still view him very negatively?
Yes.
Okay. And when it was asked, why do you feel that way, it said, watching his face as he kneeled on someone's neck, he looked so hateful. Can you explain what you mean by that? Whose face? What are you talking about?
The officer who kneeled into George Floyd's neck, just watching that.
You're talking...
Watching the video, looking at his face.
Looking at Mr. Chauvin's face?
Correct.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Yep.
And you felt that he had a hateful look on his face?
Yes.
And your feelings towards Mr. Floyd were neutral because you don't know Mr. Floyd or anything about him?
Correct.
But you also had seen some media that his family expressed that he was a good guy, a nice guy, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, there was a question asking you how many times you've watched the video. And I want to just, before I want to clarify what we mean by the video. There was a video that a bystander took, uploaded it to Facebook. That video went viral, right? Is that the video that you watched?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. Now, there's been other videos that have also been released from other bystanders. I think a few kind of made their rounds, and some body cameras from police officers and things of that nature have been released as well. Have you seen any of those videos?
Yes.
Okay. Have you watched all of those videos?
Most of them.
Okay. And how many times have you watched those videos?
I would say about 3 or 4 times.
Okay. And was that before you filled out this questionnaire or after you filled out the questionnaire?
Before.
Okay. And so the video that you, the Facebook video, we'll call it, you said that you'd watched that one time?
Yeah, the one where you can hear him crying out for his mom. Yeah, I was only able to watch that one time.
Okay. But you have watched the other videos more times?
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of that Facebook video, I presume you've seen snippets here and there on the news if you walk past the TV and it's on?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And so you may have seen smaller segments of that video here or there, right?
Correct.
Okay. But as far as watching that Facebook video from start to finish one time, right?
Correct.
And you said something that you also wrote in your questionnaire, that about your conversations with your friends and family members and colleagues, that you've had conversations with those types of people, right?
Yes.
And you wrote that you cried hearing him call for his mother during his last minutes of life.
Yes.
So that you had a very strong emotional response to that.
Yes.
Right? And I think you've referenced both here today and elsewhere in your questionnaire that once you see that, you can't unsee it.
Correct.
One of the questions in the questionnaire asks you about your ability to view graphic or otherwise sensitive material. Are you okay with that?
No.
So you may have to watch that video again here in court. Would you be okay with that?
In that case, yes.
But other graphic stuff like medical photographs or things of that nature, you would not want us to look at?
I don't want to, but if the need is here, then I will.
Okay, all right. That's what I needed to find out. You were asked a question about what I would describe as sort of the aftermath of this incident, you know, the protests, the demonstrations, and ultimately the riots. And you were asked whether you thought they were positive or negative. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And you said they have been negatively, your community has been negatively affected and positively affected. And that's what you wrote. Can you just further explain that a little more?
I mean, negatively affected because there was a life taken. Positively affected because it's become a movement. And the whole world knows about it.
So that's the good thing that's come from this. And I guess what I'm curious about is the like the property damage and things like that. Would you define that as negative?
I feel like if that was what needed to happen in order for this to be brought to the world's attention, then that's what needed to happen.
Okay. The question that comes after that is, no matter what you have seen or heard about this case, and no matter what opinions you might have formed, can you put all of that aside and decide this case only on the evidence you receive in court, follow the law, and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner? And you wrote, yes, I can be fair and follow the law, but I cannot unsee that video. Right?
Correct.
So the video has had a really pretty profound impact on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
sorry. So this is the really kind of the question at hand, right? Is you have a very strong opinion about Mr. Chauvin. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
You have a very strong reaction to seeing that video, right?
Yes.
And you have strong opinions about the movement that has come out of this incident, right?
Yes.
All of which are perfectly valid for you to hold, not questioning that. Do you, I don't know what's in your heart, right? I don't know what's in your mind. I got to take whatever you say at face value, right? And I have to believe you. And this is what I'm asking you to do is, looking in your heart and looking in your mind, can you assure us unequivocally that you can set all of that aside, all of that, and focus only on the evidence that's presented in this courtroom?
I can assure you, but like you mentioned earlier, the video is going to be a big part of evidence. And there's no change in my mind about that.
So you have formed an opinion specifically as to whether Mr. Chauvin is guilty of this case.
I have not.
You have formed an opinion about what transpired on that video.
Yes.
And there's nothing that can change your opinion.
No.
Would the court like to inquire further?
No. You see, like to inquire.
Yes,
Okay.
As to this issue?
Ask me to see the issue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just I need to clarify some things that you said regarding, what you've seen, how what you've seen made you feel, and then what you would be asked to do if you were a juror here. Okay? And you said, I think, several times that you could set aside any strongly held opinions. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And you could set aside any strongly held beliefs in deciding this case. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, if you were a juror in this case, the judge would give you instructions as to the law. And you would have to listen to those instructions and follow those instructions without regard to any beliefs or opinions that you had before coming in and hearing any evidence. Would you be able to do that?
Would I be able to follow instructions?
Yes.
Yes.
And if those instructions, if the judge gave you instructions, and if you followed those instructions, it meant that you had to return a verdict of not guilty. Would you be able to follow those instructions and return a verdict of not guilty?
That decision is not solely made by me, correct?
That's correct. But if you, in looking at the instructions, I'm listening to the judge's instructions, I see what all of the elements are, I know what the evidence is, right? I've seen it, I've seen the video, I've seen everything, but if I listen to the judge's instructions and follow them, I would have to find the defendant not guilty. Would you be able to do that? Find the defendant not guilty if you believe that the instructions required you to do so.
If I was required to, yes.
Okay. And so it sounds like you've formed, some opinion. You had an emotional response to some things that you saw,
Correct.
but you would be able to keep that in context and understand that your job as a juror would be to look at the evidence as presented in court, listen to what the judge tells you, and follow it exactly, no matter what the result. Is that
Correct.
right? Yes?
Correct.
And you're sure you can do that?
I will try my best.
Yeah. Well, and then, we have to make sure, because our job here is to try this case, and we have to do so fairly. And you would agree that every defendant, no matter what they're accused of doing, has a right to a fair trial. Do you agree with that proposition?
Yes.
And in order to get a fair trial, it's important that every juror can, look us in the eye, raise their hand and swear that they can be fair to every defendant and to evaluate the evidence and follow the law. And not that they'll try, right? Not that they'll do their best, but they will do it. And so we're just asking you, do you believe in yourself that you could do that? You could follow the law, listen to the instructions, and decide this case on its merits no matter what way it cuts?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
I'm going to follow up with a question. I want to make sure you understand that sometimes jurors come in and they think that if they give a certain answer, if they say, I can't be fair and impartial in this case, that's somehow a failure. It's not. If that's what it is, it's Every case is different. It involves different issues, and we all bring our differing backgrounds here. And I'm not questioning your answers. I'm just saying I want to give you the space to say, because you're not failing. If you are giving honest answers, that's all we require. There's no failure in saying fair and impartial. And if that's what you want to say, I absolutely accept it. Don't get me wrong. I just want to give you the space to be able to say one way or the other. Do you think that I'm going to focus on one issue, and that's the presumption of innocence? The defendant is presumed, as I told you yesterday, the defendant is presumed innocent of the charges made. And the fact that he's on trial cannot be held against him, or the fact that he's been charged. Do you think you could do that, is presume that he is innocent as you enter the courtroom?
I wouldn't like that verdict, but
Okay, so if it was not guilty, but right now you're supposed to, as opposed to at the end of the case, right now you're supposed to presume he is innocent. And you said something about you can't unsee that video. Perfectly legitimate observation. Do you think with that it would be hard for you to presume the defendant innocent during the trial?
I do.
All right. Sidebar? All right, Juror 37, I'm going to excuse you. I want you to make it very clear. As I said before, we're not doubting your fairness or impartiality. I think there are some legitimate concerns you have that I want to honor. And so I'm going to release you at this time. Thank you for filling in the questionnaire and being as open as you were. And you are released from jury service for this term, so you don't have to report anywhere unless we give you a summons maybe years from now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to take our morning break at this time. Let's reconvene at 11. We'll make a record of